I adjusted my tie for what felt like the 10th time, the knot tighter than I'd intended. Across the grand reception hall, Emily stood by the bar, surrounded by a group of bridesmaids. She was radiant, there was no denying it. Her sapphire blue gown cascaded like liquid, perfectly complementing her dark curls, which fell effortlessly over her shoulders. Emily had always had a way of commanding attention. Her smile was disarming even in the busiest of rooms, but tonight, it wasn't meant for me. The reception was a true Southern spectacle, every detail meticulously orchestrated by James and Sarah. Crystal chandeliers hung above the crowd, their light refracting off cut glass motifs scattered across white-clothed tables. A live band played smooth jazz, the notes weaving through the hum of conversation and laughter. It was the kind of event that demanded everyone's attention. Yet mine was fixed on Emily. She was 32, a year younger than me, and even after 8 years of marriage, I still found myself captivated by her in moments like this. But tonight something felt off. For weeks, there'd been a growing distance between us, subtle but undeniable. Late nights at the office, hurried swipes at her phone screen whenever I walked into the room, vague answers to simple questions about her day. It all added up to something I didn't want to acknowledge. Normally, I'd have been proud to see her light up a room with her effortless charm. But tonight, there was an edge to her energy, a nervousness barely concealed beneath her practiced laughter. It felt less like joy and more like a distraction, a cover for something heavier. James appeared beside me, pulling me out of my thoughts with a firm clap on the shoulder. "David," he exclaimed, his grin wide and glowing with wedding day bliss. "Can you believe it? I'm officially off the market." "Congratulations, man," I replied, managing a laugh that felt forced. "Sarah's the lucky one," he said, shaking his head with a boyish chuckle. "No," I said. "You're the lucky one." My voice felt distant, my eyes drawn back to the bar. Emily was no longer there. James followed my gaze, misunderstanding the reason. "Emily's been a godsend with this wedding. Sarah says she helped finalize so many details. We couldn't have pulled this off without her." I nodded, the tightness in my chest making it hard to respond. "She's good at pulling things together," I murmured. James patted me on the back before moving on to greet another guest. My attention shifted back to the room, searching for Emily. When I found her, she was across the hall, standing too close to Ryan Miller. Ryan was tall, broad-shouldered, and annoyingly charismatic, the type of man who always seemed to dominate a room. He owned a chiropractic clinic across town, and while I'd met him at a few charity events, he was little more than an acquaintance. Yet tonight, the way he leaned in as he spoke to Emily, the low timbre of his voice forcing her to tilt her head closer, made my stomach churn. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a familiar gesture that now felt too intimate. It wasn't flirting, not yet, but it was close. Too close. Dinner and toasts blurred into a haze. I barely tasted the food, barely heard the speeches. Emily moved through the evening like a ghost, always flitting from one group to the next, never staying in one place long enough for me to reach her. Her smile, her laugh, even the way she danced, it all felt calculated, as if she were playing a part. Later, I found Sarah near the cake table and asked, "Have you seen Emily?" Sarah frowned. "She was just here helping me with the bouquet toss." "That was, maybe 20 minutes ago?" I nodded, already scanning the room again. The band had slowed the tempo, couples filling the dance floor. My gaze drifted toward a side door at the far end of the hall, left slightly ajar. Dim light spilled out into the room and my heart sank. Weaving through the crowd, I approached the door, feigning nonchalance. The hum of the party faded as I drew closer, replaced by the faint murmur of voices. My pulse quickened. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The hallway was dim and narrow, lined with utility closets. At the far end, Emily stood with Ryan. He leaned casually against the wall, his posture relaxed, but his eyes locked on her. She was standing too close, her hands gesturing as she spoke, her tone hushed and urgent. "They didn't see me at first. Emily." My voice sliced through the quiet like a blade. She froze, her head snapping toward me. Panic flashed across her face. "David," she stammered, stepping back from Ryan. "This isn't, I can explain." Ryan raised a hand in defense. "Hey man, this isn't what it looks like." But it was. My chest tightened with an unbearable weight. Without a word, I turned and walked back into the reception hall. The rest of the evening passed in a daze. The lights, the music, the laughter, it all blurred together as I replayed the moment in my head. Emily standing too close to Ryan. Her expression, guilt? Fear? By the time we reached our hotel room, it was past midnight. The car ride had been silent, Emily staring out the window, and me gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. Inside, she kicked off her heels and disappeared into the bathroom. When she returned, her makeup was gone, and her hair was tied back in a loose bun. "Long night, huh?" she said, offering a tired smile. "Yeah," I muttered, not meeting her eyes. She hesitated, then climbed into bed, turning off the lamp. "Good night, David," she whispered. I didn't respond. I lay back, feigning sleep. My breathing slowed, my body still, but my mind raced like a storm. The weight of suspicion pressed on my chest, making every moment beside her feel heavier. Hours seemed to pass in the silence, my thoughts spiraling deeper into the dark corners of doubt. Then I heard it. The faint shuffle of Emily shifting in bed beside me, followed by the soft glow of her phone screen lighting up the room. She angled it carefully, her movements deliberate as if trying not to wake me. But even with her precautions, I could make out the faint tapping of her fingers against the screen, a rhythm that betrayed her secrecy. I barely breathed as I listened. The tapping stopped, followed by a whisper so soft I almost missed it. "Ryan, I'll handle it. He doesn't know anything." Her words were like shards of ice driving into my chest. I strained to hear more, every syllable now a weapon. After a pause, she added, "Don't worry about tonight. Just give me time." Then she said a name I hadn't expected. "Liam?" My stomach turned. Ryan wasn't the only one. Morning resolve. The next morning, Emily was up before me, humming softly as she moved about the room. She seemed unnaturally light, her movements fluid, her demeanor unsettlingly cheerful. The ease with which she carried herself bordered on mocking. "Let's grab breakfast before heading back to Savannah," she said as she adjusted her earrings in the mirror. "That cafe near River Walk. You love their pancakes, don't you?" "Sure," I replied, my voice flat and devoid of enthusiasm. Her brow furrowed slightly, but she didn't push. Instead, she slung her purse over her shoulder and headed for the door. I followed, my thoughts a tangled knot of anger, confusion, and determination. By the time we reached home, I had made up my mind. The investigation begins. While Emily unpacked upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table and started my search for answers. It didn't take long to find him. Mark Chandler, a former detective turned private investigator with glowing reviews. He promised discretion and results, two things I desperately needed. When Emily left for work the next morning, I made the call. "Mark Chandler," a calm voice answered. "How can I help?" "I think my wife is cheating," I said, the words heavy on my tongue. "I've caught hints, but I need confirmation. Do you have any evidence so far?" "Not enough," I admitted. "There are texts, overheard conversations. She's meeting at least two different men, Ryan Miller and someone named Liam Davis." "That's a good start," Mark replied. "What are you looking to find out?" "Everything," I said, gripping the edge of the table. "Where she goes, who she's meeting, and how long this has been going on. I need to know everything." "Understood," Mark assured me. "I'll begin surveillance immediately. If she's meeting these men, we'll uncover the truth. Secrets unearthed." That evening, while Emily was at work, I decided to do some digging of my own. Her desk in the corner of our bedroom was immaculate, too neat, too orderly. As I opened the second drawer, a glimmer of suspicion took shape. Beneath a pile of fitness magazines was a receipt from a high-end boutique downtown, dated 2 weeks ago. One item was listed, a men's watch. The engraving read, "Always yours." It wasn't for me. I stared at the receipt, my chest tightening. The watch was expensive, far more than we'd usually spend, and the engraving wasn't just personal, it was damning. That night, I waited for Emily to fall asleep. Her demeanor had been unusually affectionate all evening, her kisses lingering just a bit too long, her laughter softer, almost apologetic. It felt like a desperate attempt to smother the growing tension. But it was far too late for that. Once her breathing evened out, I reached for her phone. Within moments, I had bypassed her passcode and was scrolling through her messages. The truth unraveled in sharp, painful bursts. Ryan's messages were flirtatious and suggestive, filled with plans for lunches and subtle references to stolen moments. But Liam's messages cut deeper. They weren't just casual, they were intimate, detailed, and deliberate. This wasn't a fleeting affair. It was something calculated, planned, and nurtured over time. Their conversations revealed a weekend getaway, a secluded cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Paid for with our joint credit card, every detail meticulously arranged. "This will be perfect for us," Emily had written. "No distractions. Just you and me." The tipping point. The next morning, I called Mark to share what I had uncovered. "It's worse than I thought," I told him, pacing the kitchen. "She's been planning a getaway with Liam. I've got the receipts, the texts, everything. Send it over, Mark said. I'll cross-reference it with the surveillance we've started. As we ended the call, I felt a cold, unrelenting clarity settle over me. This wasn't just about catching her anymore. It was about reclaiming control over the chaos. I composed 2 emails that evening, each laced with the evidence I had gathered. To Megan, Ryan's wife. Subject, something you deserve to know. Megan, I'm writing to inform you about something I recently discovered. Your husband, Ryan, has been having an affair with my wife, Emily. I've attached photos and text messages that confirm this. I know this is a difficult way to find out, but you deserve the truth.